Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
How close is this to full brightness?
At this distance of 36 million miles, you are observing the sun at 2% of full brightness.
2%? Can you show me 4%?
4% would result in irreversible damage to your retinas.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Pint. My name is John.
My name is Laura.
And that's not Lloyd.
No,
that's Laura. That's Buck Highland there. Yep. Lloyd is off this week because Lloyd, I'm just going to say it, he'll tell you, he's moving his girlfriend in.
Ooh.
Yeah, a little bit of dish right there for everybody. Candy.
Some gossip.
Yeah, Candy's moving down to Connecticut, and Lloyd said this week, I just can't get a recording done. I've got moving. It sucks. Moving sucks.
Yeah.
You know, right? You moved fairly recently, last couple of years, right?
I've moved since I moved to Connecticut like 9 years ago. I've moved like 4 times, I think. So yeah, I've moved a bunch of times.
I told my wife when we bought this house, you know, a lot of people out there, I guess probably maybe people with more of a forward thinking mentality in terms of like, I know where I want to be at when I'm 52. A lot of people will say like, this is the starter home. I told her, I'm like, there's no such thing as a starter home. Like we're buying this house. And they're going to have to like come in and drag my body out of it. Yeah. Because I don't ever want to move again.
No,
That includes like, if we had found out that this place, did have the ghosts that that were sort of almost promised during our closing. And, I told you that story, Laura. I could tell anybody else that story if they ever asked me in person. I probably would have stayed. I probably would have cohabitated with even like horrible poltergeists because I just would be like, look, it's terrible that I haven't slept in 2 weeks. It's terrible that every time I like walk from one room to another, I see like bloody murder, but I also don't want to move a couch again. I don't want to do that.
No. You can like do the thing they do in sitcoms. You can draw a line down the middle of your house.
Yeah.
And the ghost can have one half of the house and then you and Lindsay could have the other half of the house.
That sounds like a fucking deal. Sounds like a deal. So because the Manster's not here, I reached out to Laura and said, I need a co-host. And she said, of course. And because Laura's a Pint insider, go to go to Patreon/The Pint, and you could be an insider too. She gets to pick movies we do. So I said, hey, look, you know, I have nothing really planned. Why don't you pick a movie? She threw about 18 different movies at me and said any of these would be fine. Very timely, Laura picked a film starring Cillian Murphy as a physicist who created a world-altering bomb. That's right. Tonight, we're talking about 2007's Sunshine. So why don't we get into that?
That's the signal! Go, 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 go!
All right. Sunshine came out on July 20th of 2007 in 10 theaters. On July 27th, of 2007, a week later, it was released into an additional 451 theaters. This movie in America never got bigger than that release. It was 406, a very small release. Now, this is a Fox Searchlight picture, so it's a smaller movie. But boy, I'm surprised that it wasn't a slightly bigger release than that. Directed by Danny Boyle. You know Danny Boyle from such things as Train Spotting and 28 Days Later. Written by Alex Garland, who has written several movies for Danny Boyle, including The Beach. He also wrote 28 Days Later, and he wrote and directed Ex Machina with Oscar Isaac. which was a good movie. He also wrote and directed a movie that I watched a couple years ago, man. People really liked this movie. I couldn't stand it. Annihilation with Natalie Portman. Have you ever seen that?
Oh yeah, I really liked Annihilation. I thought Annihilation was great.
I could not see that. We'll have to talk about that.
We can do
time.
that one, yeah.
Yeah, that one just, I don't know. It was weird. But not my speed. This was filmed at 3 Mills Studios in London. 8 stages and 17 sets. So obviously, if you watch this movie, it's set in outer space on a ship. There are a lot of different, sets and a lot of different set pieces, a lot of models as well. There really isn't anything on Earth for the most part. There's one scene at the very end that's supposed to take place in Sydney, Australia, and Stockholm, Sweden, substituted for Sydney with snow and everything. And then in the background, they just superimposed the Sydney Opera House. So that's what they did. All right, so let's get into the cast of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Round up the usual suspects.
This is the cast, and this is who we got in it. As I mentioned before, Cillian Murphy plays James Mace. You know Cillian Murphy from,
I know he plays Kappa.
Oh, shit. I'm going to start that over. I went down a line.
You went down, yeah.
I'm going to leave that in because I like being corrected.
Okay, we'll have a little bit of a background thing.
There you go. Cillian Murphy plays Robert Capa, as Laura said, and she's 100% correct. We know Cillian Murphy from so many things, such as the aforementioned 28 Days Later, Inception, and the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. He was the Scarecrow. Laura, I got to ask you right off the bat, good question for a girl or a guy. It seems like a lot of females really like Cillian Murphy. Like he's not traditionally good looking. He's kind of a, I don't want to say an odd looking guy, but he just doesn't have the face. Like he's not Chris Evans. I guess I'll put it that way.
No, yeah. He has, very intense facial features.
Yeah.
Like it's
cheekbones.
Like, he's angular and he has a very small frame.
How do you feel about him?
I think he's a good looking guy. He's not necessarily my type. He's kind of tiny and twinky for me, but
tiny and twinky. Okay.
That's how I describe the very famous actor, world-renowned handsome actor,
Cillian Murphy.
Tiny and twinky.
Cillian Murphy, aka Oppenheimer, aka Tiny and Twinkie. So he plays he's kind of the lead character. And by the way, just to kind of round this out, this is the whole cast in this movie is essentially the crew of this spaceship, the Icarus II. I want to throw this out there in factoids, which I thought was pretty funny. I never thought about it in the few times I've seen this movie prior, but they were talking about how they named the ship something that actually isn't like what Americans would name the ship. Americans always name ships like, the Glory or something like that. Or if you think about Armageddon, it's the Freedom and the Independence, I think. Yeah,
it's all very patriotic names. Like, we're America, we're tough, and we love our freedom.
Yeah, freedom. Freedom costs $1.05.
America.
Fuck yeah. But in this, this is supposed to be this international crew, and they name it Icarus, and Icarus is known as flying too close to the sun and burning up. And so, I thought I read that and thought that's pretty funny. That they would give it almost this failure of a name, and 2 ships, by the way. We'll get into that in a second. Yeah. So, Chris Evans actually plays James Mace. Chris Evans, Tiny and Twinkie or Studley and Hunky? Where are you going with him?
No, I love Chris Evans.
At this point, it's just almost like in I'd say almost every woman's DNA that answer is going to come out. And I don't blame them at all.
No, yeah, we're kind of born with that, like in our blood, just an innate attraction to Chris Evans. We just kind of want to look at him or be close to him. We want him to like us. So yeah.
And the great thing about Chris Evans too, is that I used to follow him on Twitter. He seems like a good guy. Like,
yeah, he
seems like he's genuinely a good guy. Like there's some of these, these handsome celebrity actors out there. Like, I know you hate him, but Jared Leto, who, I understand there's a lot of women think he's handsome, but he's also kind of known as a creepazoid.
He has a cult. He has like a whole weird cult thing. Yeah. I hate Jared Leto so much.
Chris Evans apparently does not have a cult. I do want to, there is one bit of this movie before we get into Chris Evans a little bit more. Why does he start with one hairdo and end with immediately change to another in this film? Did you notice that he starts off kind of long haired? Is it because he's just cleaning up? Is that because they don't reference it at all?
No, they do reference it. After he's kind of freaking out in the beginning.
Yeah.
The Dr. Searles, he prescribes him 2 hours in the Earth room. And then, like, there's a throwaway line that he says right afterwards. He's like, and why don't you get a haircut while you're at it?
Oh, I obviously heard the Earth room line because they show that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Because I was like, I've seen the movie before, but every time I'm like, why? Like 10 minutes in, why does he change his look? Of course, if you know Chris Evans, you know him from Captain America, The Avengers, Snowpiercer, which I've never seen, but I wanted to personally.
I love Snowpiercer.
Is that good?
Snowpiercer seems very, like, people seem to either really hate Snowpiercer or really love Snowpiercer. I've never really had anybody kind of be like, yeah, it's fine.
All right, I got to check it out. I got to check it out and see where I fall on it. Rose Byrne, who plays Cassie, she's the ship's, James Mace, by the way, is the engineer. Cassie Rose Byrne is the ship's pilot. You know her from Bridesmaids and 28 Weeks Later, not 28 Days Later. She is, she's good in this, but I feel like they kind of gave her the hysterical woman role. Did you feel the same way? Like she's not hysterical. She can handle shit, but she constantly looks like she's on her last fucking nerve at every moment.
Yeah, she seems, even just her skin, she's very pale and like she's very meek, and you can just tell that she seems beaten down a little bit. Like she's just kind of over everything. She just wants to get in and get out of there and get home at this point. And she's just kind of exasperated, it seems.
Yeah. I like her. Mm-hmm. It's in my DNA to like her.
Oh yeah.
Michelle Yeoh plays Corazon. Of course, you know her from the movie I still haven't seen yet, Everything Everywhere All at Once, which she just won an Academy Award for, but she's been in a million things. I love her in Star Trek Discovery. Cliff Curtis plays, and she is I guess she's like the gardener / life support technician on the ship.
Yeah, she's the botanist.
The botanist.
Like, she takes care of all the plants so they actually have the oxygen replenishment. Yeah,
needed to get back from their mission. Cliff Curtis plays Dr. Searle. He is the psych officer on the ship who has a strange addiction we'll get into. He was in The Meg, and also we recently did Deep Rising. He was in that. Troy Garrity plays Harvey, who is the communications officer and the second in command of the ship, and also the only actor I had no clue who is or was in this movie at all.
Yeah, me too. I've never seen him in anything before.
No. Mostly TV stuff. He was, he was in the films Barbershop 1 and 2, and he also was in the HBO show I think that The Rock was in, called Ballers. He seemed to have been in a lot of that.
Yeah, I guess I kind of missed those ones.
Yeah.
Not really in my purview.
Yeah, same. Hirokyo Sanada plays Kaneda, the captain of the ship. He was on a show I like called The Last Ship on TNT. But he was also Scorpion or Sub-Zero. I think Scorpion in that latest Mortal Kombat film that was on HBO a few years ago.
Oh, I still haven't watched that one yet.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither. All right, 2 more. Benedict Wong plays Trey. I'm not really sure what he is. He's like the computer specialist or navigator of the ship. I think he's the navigator.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured he was, because I was trying to like pinpoint like each of their specific jobs, and I figured navigator because he's the one that's trying to fix the trajectory, and we can get into that part. Yeah, so that seems the most likely that's his job.
He was in Prometheus, and he was also he's Wong, playing Wong in Doctor Strange and the MCU films. And finally, Mark Strong plays Pinbacker, who is the always naked and always kind of fuzzy captain of the first Icarus ship. We'll get into that, but you know him as Sinestro in the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie, and also a movie that I find fucking hilarious, The Brothers Grimsby.
Which I just watched for the first time. Like, I think I mentioned I was watching it to you or something a couple weeks ago.
Did you like it, or do you hate me for saying
No, I thought it was great. I laughed so hard at that movie. It was one of the most ridiculous movies I've seen in my life.
I watched it one night, like either like during the pandemic or right at the end of it on Tubi, and I thought, I'd seen the previews for this. It's like Sacha Baron Cohen, but like it really appealed to me for 2 reasons. I was in the mood for something short, and it was like 80 minutes.
Yeah.
And, Mark Strong is good. So I like the dichotomy of these two guys playing against each other. And I'm like, this is going to suck though. I was laughing from the fucking beginning of that movie. And there is a scene that is just as gross and as terrifying as anything you've ever seen in a movie. I'm not going to even get into it. Just watch. It's called The Brothers Grimsby here in America, and everywhere else it's called Grimsby. So if you can't find it for some reason, try Grimsby. Yeah,
it's also better like not to give away that scene because I think people should just come upon it and not know what they're going to be getting into.
Come upon it is a good way to put it.
Yeah. Ooh, I didn't even mean that.
A couple notes about this movie real quick. 3 years of production on this movie, a year writing it, with, Boyle and Alex Garland going back and forth, a year of pre-production, 3 months of shooting, and a year of post-production. And Danny Boyle said, I will never do a science fiction movie ever again. He said it was just too much. He always wanted to do a science fiction movie and was inspired by 2001 and stuff like that. But he said after the experience of this, he'll never do that kind of thing again. A ton of scientific advisors were brought into this, NASA personnel, and Dr. Brian Cox, who's kind of, you may have heard the name before. He's kind of a celebrity, astronomer. Or I think he's actually a professor of particle physics at the University of Manchester in England. He was brought on to kind of do a lot of the science stuff here, but he also made it very clear that he wanted it to be like you would be able to experience the life of these scientists and astronauts, but they didn't want the science to get in the way of story. That's why, it's obviously not like people might go, oh, that couldn't happen or that. He's like, I know, but we were just trying to get really a good baseline so that these actors seem like they knew what they were talking about.
Well, sometimes with science fiction movies, the stories get lost in either being too sciencey and going over the viewer's head, like not being able to wrap their minds around it, or just being so ridiculously outlandish that even just anybody, an average person, not a science, you'd be like, that would never possibly happen. So I think they found a really good in between in this movie.
Yeah, agreed. I agree. So that's some notes for now. Let's get into it. Laura, what is the basic setup of what's happening? I think 50 years it's supposed to be in the future, approximately.
Yeah, I think it's 2057.
2057. What's happening?
Yeah. So the sun is dying out. It's getting weaker and weaker, it seems, by the day, and everybody on Earth is slowly not freezing to death yet, but that's where Earth is heading, like a cold death.
The heat death of the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would really suck. That would really not be cool. So 7 years prior, the Icarus 1 ship, or Icarus as it was called probably at that time, was sent to the sun with a giant bomb attached to it. A theoretical bomb, by the way. They don't know if it's going to work. And that ship disappeared. So they send the crew of the Icarus 2 who we're following to basically go and do this themselves now. It seems like they've been, did they say they were like in stasis for 6 years, like, or something like that? Like they were,
I think it said they had left at this point 16 months ago.
16 months, you're correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And they're approaching the sun. And the idea is that they're going to get close enough to the sun. They're going to drop Tiny and Twinkies. What was it? They're going to drop Cillian Murphy, Kappa's bomb into the atmosphere of the sun. And the idea
Which is also funny because the bomb is the size of Manhattan. So it kind of is the Manhattan Project.
Yeah. Yeah. The original thing I had read was it was originally supposed to be the size of the moon.
Mm-hmm.
But they said for the ship to be able to tow it and it to look good in the screen, they had to lower it down. And also one of the science things they said was that this is theoretically possible, but it would take 1 billion bombs like that to restart the sun. It wouldn't be like one bomb.
It wouldn't be just like explode. The sun's back. Yay.
It's a nice day.
Like, oh, thank God the flowers are out again.
Yeah. Oh, that was so close. So these guys are heading there, and right off the bat, it seems like everybody pretty much gets along, but we're told at the beginning that they're getting to a point where they're not going to be able to contact Earth for a while. This happens in 90% of these movies with these deep space adventures where it's like we're getting to the point where we can't talk back to Earth. Kappa goes in and he apparently overspends his time. And Mace, the Chris Evans character, who can be kind of a hothead, we see this giant fight between the two of them because Kappa overspent time in the communications room, and by the time Mace was able to go send his last message for like a couple years to his family, they had already passed the point of no return.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree, Laura, that in this movie, Mace, the Evans character, is the only one, like with even though he's like kind of nutty in that scene, he's the only one that's got like a realistic, level-headed view of everything here.
Yeah. Like throughout the entire movie, he's pretty much the only voice of reason throughout. Everybody's just like, they have one job, and he's the only person that's really just, we have to stay on track, and this is what we do, or else everybody's going to die. It's
the ultimate, like, you know, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one from Star Trek, because literally, if you don't do this job, it's not like if you don't do this job, oh, you know, this minor thing happens. If you don't do this and you fail, then the Earth is going to freeze. If we don't do this, there's no point of doing anything. It's just, I was on his side the entire time, and I couldn't believe that they had even thought any differently than just going ahead with the mission. That was crazy to me. I understood the aspect of the extra payload, and that's where we get. So let's get there. So they get a distress signal. Number two of all the things that happen in deep space movies is the distress signal. Alien, think about Event Horizon. So number one is they get out of contact with Earth. And then number two is all of a sudden there's a distress signal. They determine the distress signal is from the Icarus I, the ship with the first payload that disappeared. And now everybody is deciding, what should we do? We have a split in the room. We have the Mace character who says, no fucking way, because we have to go reignite the sun. And if we go, and they say it's like 15,000 miles out of their way. Mm-hmm. I understand in space travel parlance, that might not be a lot, but there's so many variables. And we learn that from this movie. Yeah. And especially they're so close to the sun. That's a very dangerous area of space. Yeah. Yeah. The ship, by the way, the Icarus I, is like parked right next to the sun. It's like, it's just hovering there. Just hovering there, parallel parked right there. So they have this conversation, and they leave it up to Kappa, the Cillian Murphy character, to decide what they're going to do. Because we could either go straight to the sun and drop your theoretical bomb on it, and if it doesn't work, the sun won't reignite, and we might get caught up in it and die. We won't have time to go back to the Icarus I to get their bomb and go back again. If we go to the Icarus I, we can get their bomb, and we could drop 2 fucking bombs on this thing. Kappa decides that that's what they're going to do. So they all decide, okay, we're going to reset our course to get to Icarus I. So they reset their course, and all seems good until an alarm goes off. Trey, the navigator character, is trying to figure out what happened. Laura, what did he not account for? He did not account for the fact that they had to tilt their shields, like I think it was 1.1 degrees, to compensate for them approaching the sun at a slightly different angle because they were coming in a different trajectory to go to Icarus I. So the sun is now, instead of having these incredible shields, like which the graphics on this was incredible to me, that's blocking out all of this heat, which is pretty much just protecting them from frying up and bursting into flames. Now it's just slightly off, and it's gonna start causing some issues. Gonna start causing some issues. While we're on the subject of the sun, before we finish off this bit with the shields, I want to bring up the weird viewing room that they have in this ship that Searle, the doctor character, seems to be kind of addicted to. Yeah. Essentially, they have a room that you can sit in. It's just kind of like got a bench in the middle of the room and a viewport, and you could sit there and essentially just stare at the sun. You could only stand to stare at the sun in this room with a filter over it at like 2%. 3% for like 10 seconds will blow you up. 2.9% will blind you. Mm-hmm. And Searle keeps going back to this room, and through the course of the movie, he just gets more sunburnt. And he's peeling. He's just, there's something about, and it's funny because this is the guy who's the doctor, the psychiatrist or psychologist on the ship that's supposed to be the most grounded. And he is kind of getting really into like the effects of this. So I wanted to throw that out there real quick. It's almost like he has an addiction to it, and then you're watching him suffer the consequences of the addiction, like almost like a drug addiction degrades your body and your face. His addiction to looking at the sun is letting his skin peel off. Like there's even one little scene where you see him like peel skin off of his forehead, and
I don't know, I'll watch like slashers hack up bodies and everything, but that peeling the skin off of his forehead, I was just like, ugh. Like it was just a tiny little scene, but I did not like that.
At least he didn't eat it, Laura, because that might have sent you right.
oh yeah, I would have vomited right there.
Yeah, he pulls the skin off his head. It's pretty gross. So Trey now, because this happened, is a mental wreck because essentially, as the captain says, well, look, we didn't die, right? Like, because this could have killed them.
Mm-hmm.
So since we didn't die, let's figure out how to fix this. There's some damage to the actual ship. The captain says, I'm going to go out and spacewalk. I need a volunteer. And Mace is like, I volunteer. And they're like, okay, get suited up. He's like, I volunteer Kappa. Like, like kind of a little way of saying, you chose for us to do this, so you're going to go fucking fix it.
Yeah, it was a big fuck you to him because they were very diametrically opposed, like on each side of that. So
and what's crazy is Murphy, the Kappa character, is just like, okay. Like, he's very passive. Like, I might have been like, fuck no, I'm not going out there. There was no argument at all.
Maybe he's starting to feel like, yeah, this kind of is my fault based on my decision. Like, we all know that Trey is, you can see it in his face. He feels an extraordinary amount of guilt, like just that he screwed up this calculation. Also, Kappa's probably being like, well, I'm the larger decision maker here, and this is kind of a trickle-down effect of my decision, so maybe I should be the one to fix this.
Yeah. So we get a spacewalking scene. These suits are really awesome. The spacesuits in this film are designed to be super claustrophobic, as the ship is for the actors. They have cameras mounted on the inside of the helmet, so we get to see scenes like that. It's like a gold leaf instead of a fabric. The producers of the film wanted them to use like NASA style suits, and Danny Boyle really wanted these like suits that look like they were insulated for heat. And also, because he made them claustrophobic, they have just this weird little visor it's not like a full face mask. And the nickname for these suits on set were the Kenny suits, because they look like Kenny from South Park. How, you know, his hood is pulled so short. But yeah, I really like the design of everything in this. Like you said, the shields, the ships, the bomb, the suits are really cool. So they go out and they decide they're going to start spacewalking. As they're out there spacewalking, Cassie and Mace are adjusting the ship and trying to make it so they don't get burned up out there, trying to keep them in the shadow. They have to sacrifice a couple of communications towers to do so. But as all this is happening, we as the viewers see something happen that nobody realizes happens. Like a flare from the sun enters into like one of the units on the ship and basically beelines right for what, Laura, and destroys it.
The garden, their green room where all their plants are growing, that is giving them the oxygen to breathe, which is probably one of the most flammable areas of the ship.
Yeah. So as the spacewalk is happening, all of a sudden more alarms go off and they suddenly realize that their green room, their oxygen room, is fucking totally on fire. And Michelle Yeoh Corazon freaks out. She runs down to it, but there's no hope. It's just ripping through. And Chris Evans, Mace's character, says the only way we're going to put this out is like a flash to oxygen flash it. So they release all the oxygen tanks. It's going to burn up very hot, but it's going to destroy everything there, but it's going to stop it from spreading in the ship.
Yeah, like if they said they didn't do that, it was going to burn for 6 hours, and there was a 60% chance of it breaching containment, would have been bad. So again, he is making a difficult decision, the idea of the mission in mind, and she's just like, no, you can't kill all the plants. And he's like, we've already lost all the plants.
Yeah, just
like, this is the only way to go.
We lost the plants. If we don't do this, we're going to lose our lives. So hits the button, blows the oxygen out, and blows the fuck out of that room. Corazon is fucking heart. She's heartbroken at this. You know, she's obviously very attuned to the plants, and I mean this room is pretty dope. I mean, like there's all these like giant fans on the walls, and then there's like just like carrots growing and
a rain thing it's raining in the middle, and it's dripping into a stream, and the shot of her when she runs to the room trying to save it, where you see the fire in front of her and then on both sides of her.
Oh yeah.
And she just like kind of drops to her knees and there's just flames coming up. That was a really great shot that stuck in my head.
So as they're out and they're trying to fix this issue, it's some kind of pump or something that's failing on the outside of the ship. All of a sudden, God, what happened, Laura? They start to Do they lose another shield? They start to realize the sun is coming up too quickly on the spacewalkers, right?
Yeah, so it's Kaneda and Kappa out there, and they're on the last, like, the hydraulic pumps for the panels that make up the shield. 4 of them had failed. So they get 3 of them are fixed, and then they're coming up on fixing the 4th one. But yeah, it's tilting too quickly, or the sun's coming in too quickly for whatever reason. If they don't fix this panel, there's no point in having fixed any of the other panels. All 4 of them needed to be fixed. They're trying to fix it as quickly as possible, and they're getting close to it. But the captain, Kaneda, he is just trying to, repair it. But they all see that it's kind of too late, and he can repair it, but they're not going to be able to save him.
Right. So he orders Kappa to go back inside. Kappa doesn't want to go, but he tells him, "You go." Like, it's understood. This is one of those moments in a movie where there's a couple in this movie where the character just knows, this is a one-way ticket.
Yeah.
Kappa gets back inside the ship, and Kaneda essentially just gets eaten up by the sun. Kaneda at one point went into the sunroom before, not with Searle, but on his own. So, like, he wanted to check it out himself, and his death is kind of like an extension of that, where he is just, like, captivated by, he's literally standing, as close to the sun as any person ever could. And then it just fucking obliterates him.
Yeah.
Kappa gets back inside, and now it comes to the point where they're severely down on their oxygen supply. It's at this point, it's almost pretty much guaranteed that it's a one-way mission. But they decide now that we still have to go to the Icarus 1, because now we have to see if maybe we can get some of their life support, or, they basically decide this is going to be our next best option.
I think they have to go to Icarus 1 because they don't even have enough oxygen for them to make it to the position where they would even deploy their payload.
Right.
They don't have an option to not go there because they'll all die before they get to the proper positioning to release the bomb into the sun.
Right. And Harvey, who is not Captain Material necessarily, is the captain
No,
now.
he's not.
Yeah, he's a little bit of a baby kind of, and he's, okay, we're going to go. So that's the next portion of the movie. They go to the Icarus. Meanwhile, we didn't mention it, but Kaneda earlier in the movie had seen some of the distress tapes from the Icarus with Pinbacker, the captain of that ship.
Mm-hmm.
And he's mentioning how they got caught in a solar flare storm, and there was 19 holes in the ship, and they were trying to repair them, but it's all kind of broken up, and you're just kind of getting the idea of what happened to them. So they get to the Icarus 2 and they dock with it. And the easiest way to say it is all the male characters go over and the female characters stay behind. So they go over, they open the lock. This is the dustiest fucking ship of all time. Everything is coated in a thick layer of dust. One of the characters says, well, most dust is human skin cells, which is...
Is it 80% human skin?
Yeah, that's a fact I've known for a long time, if it is a real fact, because of a bed... what is that place called?
Bed Bath and Beyond?
No, Bath and Body Works.
Oh, Bath and Body Works. Okay.
I went to a Bath and Body Works years ago to get my wife something for Christmas, and they used to have on the shelves of their products, they would have these little placards that had factoids, and one of them was 80% of dust is skin cells, and I thought, fuck. Now
that's such a weird little piece of trivia to have in Bath and Body Works.
I think it was with the loofahs, maybe trying to get you to scrub down,
or trying to get you to create more dust by scrubbing your dead skin cells off.
Yeah, okay. I always remember that because I'm every time I dust something, I'm this is my skin. It's terrible. So they get into the ship, real dusty, real nasty, and they start to go through. Did you notice? I mean, it's not hard, but you notice the subliminal flashes in this scene?
Yeah, I was watching it, and then because I said the DVD, we were having issues with it. I thought for a second that it was an issue with the DVD, and I was wait, did I see something? And then another one happened.
Yeah.
And I was okay, wait, no, we need to rewind that so I can try and see what it was. And it was actually kind of unnerving, the little subliminal flashes that they had there.
Yeah. Yeah, on the Icarus 2, there is a picture of the crew of our crew that we're following, when they launched. And it's they got Christmas hats on and they're floating. This is the same picture, but of the Icarus 1 crew. And as they're going through the Icarus 1, we're getting these quick flashes of the faces of the crew in that picture. we eventually see the picture as well.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going through and they're trying to figure out what happened. The ship works fine. Mace determines that the ship was sabotaged. The mainframe computer was ejected from like its coolant tanks. These things are run so hot they have to be submerged in coolant tanks, and that's why the ship is not working. All of its systems seem to be working. They're finding everything seems to be working. Harvey goes in and finds their oxygen garden, and it's like the fucking jungle in Costa Rica at this point.
He says he can bear it's like growing like what he said, 7 years of unkempt growth, and it's so thick that he can hardly walk through it.
And eventually they find the viewing room, the sun viewing room on this ship. And it was made to look like, they said, I was reading, the victims of the Pompeii, Vesuvius, because essentially it's the whole crew, or at least it seems like most of them, sitting on the bench, and they're all just like ash, like they're solid ash. They're still in human form, but it appears that they, went in there and probably took their own lives, or someone killed them there. So what else do they find? What else do they find in the ship, Laura? Is there anything I'm missing?
They find out that the coolant tanks had been sabotaged. They find a video from Pinbacker, the captain of Icarus One, kind of just rambling nonsensical ideas, and he's all like distorted, and like you can tell there's something wrong with him, just even the way he's kind of talking manically.
Yeah, he's talking about God quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, and Mace is like, does any of that make sense to anybody else? Like, everybody's just kind of confused about it.
That's kind of Pinbacker's shtick, is like the maniacal weird ramblings, because that's we're going to get a lot of that in a little bit. So as they're getting ready to figure out what to do on the ship, all of a sudden there's a huge fucking ruckus, and Cassie contacts them and lets them know that the airlock just fucking blew up. We're detached. I can't get us reattached because there's too much damage. There's damage on the Icarus One. You guys are kind of in trouble. So they're trying to figure out what to do. And again, Mace being the only level-headed one, or the only one that really has the idea of what should happen here, is like, okay, there's one spacesuit here. We're going to put Kappa in it, and we're going to get him back over to the Icarus 2, because he's the only one that matters. Like, Mace or Harvey or Searle go back. They can't operate the bomb. He's got to go back to operate the bomb. So they start to load him into the suit, and then Harvey has a fucking bitch fit.
When he did that, I was just like, ugh, like, fuck you, Harvey. You're fucking worst. Just even his voice gets all whiny. He's like, I don't want to do this. Like, Harvey thinks that since he is now, since Kaneda had died, he's now the second he was the second in command. He's the captain. He's like, I'm the captain now. I have to go back. I have to leave the ship. So yeah, he's getting all whiny about it.
Yeah. And they basically are like, no, we're sending Kappa back. But because Mace is an engineer and he's smart, he decides, you know what we could do? Here's what we could do. We could wrap ourselves up in some of the thermal material that lines the halls of this airlock. And if the Icarus 2 can line up as close as possible to the Icarus 1's airlock, and we like basically explosively decompress out of the airlock, it will shoot us straight across, in theory. Problem is since the computers are all down, someone has to stay behind to manually do this.
Mm-hmm.
Searle's like, I'll do it. Like, at this point, you kind of just get the idea that Searle's like checked out, kind of like, this is the right thing to do. I'm the least needed in this crew. And you know what? I'm going to go fucking stare at the sun big time.
Yeah. And even right before that, before Searle like says, no, I'm going to do it. Harvey's like, oh, let me guess. You guys are going to make me stay behind and do it. Like, he's the worst captain ever. He sucks.
Yeah. You're going to be very happy in about 2 minutes. So Searle stays behind, and they all line themselves up in the airlock. He manually overrides the override, and the door opens. They go shooting out. Now, before we get to what happens to them, Searle is just like, all right, they got a room just like the room I like over there, but this time I'm going fucking full balls out.
Yeah.
So he just sits on the bench next to all the other corpses and turns it on, but like shuts the filter off. And he essentially gets fucked to death by the sun. I mean,
he just waits for the Icarus 1 to drift out of the protection of the Icarus 2 shield.
Right.
So like the sun just blasts them. And one thing I wanted to bring up, just the sound design in this movie with the sun blew me away. They made this kind of an inanimate object seems like the wrong word, but this non-living object just feels so violent and imposing. Like, yeah, it's the sun. We all know, like, if we go outside without sunblock on, we'll get sunburn or we'll get sweaty. But when you get so close to the sun, it's just you can't even, like, just I don't even know how to describe it. Just the sound that they use to depict how powerful and violent the sun was when it's hitting the shields, when it's hitting people. It was just, that was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
It's beyond imagination how powerful the sun is.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane. And obviously with Pinbacker, like what the effect of the sun can do on your psyche after, and we see it with Searle. Like, this is the psychologist, and he's starting to get a little wonky because of this giant ball of fucking fire.
Yeah, he should be the most level-headed one, and you can, like, see kind of his, like, nerves detaching from each other, just desiring this power and this presence.
So, get back to our airlock. Everybody blasts out of it. Kappa goes right towards the middle, but kind of ends up hitting the door and hangs on to it. Same thing happens with Mace. Kappa catches Mace, throws Mace inside. Harvey, he kind of isn't even close. And Laura must have been very happy when we get to see his eyes freeze.
Oh, I cheered when there was that wide shot of like the two of them drifting closer to the airlock, and then he's just veering off slightly. I was like, yes.
Yeah. Harvey freezes to a horrible space death. But our other characters get back inside. Kappa gets out of his suit. He's essentially fine. Mace is a little fucked up. His hand seems to be a little gangrenous.
Oh yeah, he had the frostbite on his thumb, which was another part that kind of gave me the ick.
It's a real clencher.
But the women come in and kind of get them all sorted out. So now there's technically four of them left. We didn't mention it, but Trey is on suicide watch because he is just like catatonic over what he feels like is all of his fault. Kind of is.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of, sort of. Don't ever kill yourself. But
you're not really allowed to forget things in space.
Yeah.
You have to remember everything.
Yeah. So they have determined now that they have enough O2 to get pretty close to the sun and do what they got to do, but for 4 people, not 5. So now we have the terrible scene where they determine that they have to go. One of them has to go and kill Trey, and they have a vote, and everybody votes for it. Even Kappa's just like, kill him. Like, I was waiting for Kappa to be a little bit more like Cassie was.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, if we have to do this, just go kill him. The 3 of them vote kill, Corazon, Kappa, and Mace has said, I'll go do it. And Cassie is just like, you're not getting my vote.
Yeah, she's not going to give her, like, she knows it has to be done, but she's not going to give her permission for him to do it. He's going to do it anyway. She just doesn't want to tell him it's okay to do it.
So Mace goes and decides he's going to go do it. But then he finds Trey in this really weird room with birds that fly around in the walls.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what that was at first. And it was just like, because the picture was faded or something. It wasn't as clear as the other like screens or whatever. But yeah, I didn't know what that was at first.
And Trey has already killed himself. Now, when Mace opens the drawer, there's supposed to be like 5 of these like vibrating scalpel knives, and 2 of them are missing. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that? He takes 1, 2 are missing. Obviously, Trey used one of them to kill himself, but there's another one missing. Don't worry, guys.
We'll find that other one.
We will find that other one in the back of Corazon pretty soon. But the real mystery is who does it. Well, it's Pinbacker. That's what happens. So here's what happens.
Big reveal.
Kappa has a conversation with what we call on the pint 80s computer, which is a computer on this ship, where he's like, okay, let's start getting prepped to drop this bomb. And then the computer's like, you're not going to make it. And he's like, no, we're going to make it. We already determined.
Stupid computer. You don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
You're so fucking dumb.
What are you saying, computer?
You don't know. Ugh, I hate you. We can get there with the remaining 4 people, he tells the computer. And the computer's like, there's 5. And he's like, no, there's 4 because we were going to kill Trey, but Trey killed himself. And the computer's like, I know. There's still 5, bitch. And he's like, I don't understand what you're saying. It's Corazon, Cassie, Mace, and myself. He's like, and the computer's like, I said fucking 5.
Like, listen to me, you fucking idiot. You're already making bad decisions. Yeah. Just listen to somebody else for once.
Just listen. there's a fifth person breathing your precious oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually even throws it out there. 19 hours to get to the bombing, distance. In 14, you're going to not be able to function very well. In 16, you're going to be drooling all over yourself. And in like 16 and a half, you're dead at this point with 5 people. Okay. So where is the fifth person? In the viewing room. Okay. So he goes to the viewing room, and this is where we find Pinbacker, fully naked, completely blurry, and maybe planking or doing push-ups. I don't know. He's like, right? Isn't he on like on his like the first time we see him? Isn't he like in a push-up position?
Yeah, I feel like that kind of goes in line with like the kind of character Mark Strong would play, like showing a feat of strength or toughness or something.
Yeah. So essentially, I'm not going to really quote Pinbacker much because he speaks in kind of like riddles, but he is he's clearly fucking crazy. And Laura, if you had to kind of, I guess, translate Pinbacker's whole mission and why he's doing what he's doing and what he's trying to do, what would you say it is? It
seems like, and this obviously had to have happened not only in the interim between when they lost the first one and the second one got here, but before the first one had gotten to that point, was he's probably been going very slowly crazy, and he believes God is telling him that he wants to bring everybody to heaven with him, and that how dare humans try to question or correct the course of action that God has chosen. And kind of the way that I interpreted all of this, just because his appearance is he's kind of like a melty, scarry, like mess of skin, is like he's kind of viewing the sun as God.
Yeah.
And in that way. So that's kind of the interpretation I took. Maybe not like a literal God up in heaven, but like the sun is the God to him.
Right. The sun is God. The sun is dying, and the sun is telling him to everybody should go. Like it's time.
Like everybody has to die. Like if I'm dying, you all are dying too.
Yeah. So this is the part of the movie, and I can tell you this right now because I have friends who I know who have seen this movie, and it's a discussion of this movie where a lot of people feel like they kind of lose it and feel like this suddenly goes from being a space human drama to almost a slasher film in the last 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. Did you feel like these last 15 minutes were a wrong turn, or were you okay with the way it goes?
Oh, I liked the last 15 minutes. I liked the change of kind of atmosphere of it. I think it kind of brought you into kind of this confusion because they don't really know exactly what's going on. They know that he's there, and until he gives like his diatribe about, killing everybody and like, you shouldn't be doing this. Like, it's very confusing. And at the same time, they're trying to complete the mission.
Right.
So I thought it was a really good way to bring the audience into this kind of hectic and confusing, and like you're not really on the stable ground like towards the end of the movie. I liked it. I liked where they brought it.
All right. So let's get through these last 15 minutes and what goes on. Pinbacker is now just like on the ship terrorizing everybody. They're getting closer to the sun, and they know that they have to do the best they could do with the life support they have. Corazon ends up dying. Cassie gets terrorized by Pinbacker, but we don't see what happens to her. And they end up realizing that they have to get these computers back going because they realize that Pinbacker is the one that destroyed the airlock. And he also has sabotaged the computers the same way he sabotaged them on Icarus 1. Earlier in the movie, there's a scene where Mace is working on these computers, and in a little bit of, what do you call that? Foreshadowing, his hand dips into the coolant, and it's clearly very painful. Only way that he can get these computers back into the coolant to get them started up again, there's, I think, 4 of them, or 3 of them. He has to manually basically get in these tanks and pull them down. He gets 2 of them down. The third one or the fourth one, whatever the amount it is, he's almost got it down, and then his leg gets pinned.
Yeah, he's too weak at this point, to pull himself out of the tank. And you can see, like, I kind of even felt it, like, you ever, like, when your arms are just too weak or your legs and you just, like, feel that shaking and don't have control of them. You saw him struggling to pull himself up, and you're like, no, he doesn't have it in him. But, like, at the same time, he's been so strong throughout this entire movie. It was just kind of Like, okay, you can kind of relax now.
you could die a popsicle now and it's okay.
Yeah.
and he does. He gets
He did
kind
a
of
good job.
he did. Honestly, he did the best he could. But he does die there. So the mainframe of the ship is done. So now it's going to be up to Kappa to figure out how to get all this done. And it's just like this like whirlwind at the end of him trying to get everything set to get on board the bomb before the actual Icarus 2 destructs because it's getting too close to the sun.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of like cool little moments, like, of Cillian Murphy, like trying to, get from, at one point he even does the same thing. He hits the ground in the spacesuit and he is in the same position where he's not frozen, but he's literally just banging his head because he can't move anymore.
No, yeah, the little noise that he makes when he fell over. I know it was supposed to be serious, but it was very funny to me, and I laughed at that.
I agreed.
Like,
yeah.
It was very weak, and I mean, which is probably like it conveyed like an extreme helplessness, but it was still just kind of funny. It was Twinkie and Tiny, like Cillian Murphy,
just like CM as we call him around here. So he ends up getting onto the bomb, and he runs into Pinbacker and Cassie. And they're on the bomb now, but he has got to just worry about getting this thing launched, getting the blasters launched so that the bomb starts to push itself into the trajectory and the atmosphere of the sun and does its job. So he talks to Cassie and she's like, he's here. And she's just like, just go do what you got to do. This is pretty gross. Pinbacker catches him and it seems like, he's not going to be able to get out of his grasp. But Laura, what does he do to get out of his grasp?
Well, so Pinbacker's holding him over the edge, and then Cassie comes and she jumps and grabs onto Kappa, so it gives them more weight, because I guess she realizes that the weight of them will pull the skin off of his bones, which is way worse than when Searle was peeling the skin off of his head.
Yeah.
But it just shows you how degraded his body, like you saw, okay, yeah, he's scarred up and like all of that, but that really just shows you how degraded his body has become because of his exposure to the sun. Like, it not only it fucked up his brain, but it just fucked up all the tendrils and everything, all the meat on the inside of the
yeah.
I'm thinking about it too much.
He gets degloved, as they would say.
Oh yeah. Oh, I don't like that term.
his whole arm skin just comes off like so much barbecue, and
like a really good rib. Like that's what you want a good rib to do. You don't want your arm to do that.
Yeah. You don't ever want to say your arm is falls off of the bone. But Pinbacker's arm falls off the bone essentially, and Kappa is able to get away from him. He manages to get everything plugged in. He's got to get plugged in. And he starts up the bomb. And as he mentioned earlier in the movie, I'm not a scientist, but it's essentially like almost like an atom splitting. You'll see this one like little star type of thing kind of drop and hover. And if it works, it's going to split and split and split and split. And we kind of get a really cool visual at the end of, Kappa turning this bomb on and just all these like starbursts like forming in this room that the bomb kind of, is in. Pinbacker die in the explosion, or does he kill him beforehand? I can't remember.
I believe he dies in the explosion because I'm thinking about it, because they fall off the edge of it once his skin comes off of his arm, but also the bomb is rotating, so they're not necessarily just falling down, they're gliding along that edge.
Right.
And they get far enough away from him that I believe that his death is, if not like blood loss from his arm due in the explosion when the bomb goes off.
So Kappa turns this thing on, and as I said, everything just starts filling up. It's just this scene of Cillian Murphy kind of floating and like reaching out, and it's supposed to be, he had these dreams earlier that he talked to Cassie about because she had the same dreams about basically the surface of the sun, which obviously these people are probably just obsessed with because that's their mission.
Yeah, their whole mind has to constantly revolve around the sun. They always have to be thinking about it, and probably deteriorates your mind anyway just to have to focus on one thing so intensely for so long.
So he basically just reaches out, and it seems like, he's touching the surface of the sun, and the bomb goes off. Laura, where do we go to? What's the last scene of the movie?
So the last scene is what turns out to be Kappa's sister. She's reading one of the video messages that he had sent in the very beginning of the movie. And it's saying like, hey sis, you'll know it has worked if you wake up one day and it's a particularly beautiful day out, like the sun is shining. You'll know that the bomb has exploded and our mission worked, is completed. Yeah, and they pull back and you see that there's snow all over the place, and then you see the Sydney Opera House in the background.
And there's also these, did you notice those 3 weird like monolith things that were near where her kids were playing?
Yeah.
That was just a tip of the hat to 2001. That they did.
You know what? I didn't even put that. That makes a lot of sense, because I did notice those things, but I was like, okay, I guess those are just something there, but that makes a lot of sense.
So as her and the kids are kind of walking home, it seems, and like, as you know, the day is very like, it's not dark outside, but it's very kind of gray. We see the sunshine starting to spread across the earth, and across the land. And we know that their mission was not a failure. Mm-hmm. And that is the story of 2007 Sunshine. Let's talk about the story of its box office.
All you care about is money.
So week ending July 22nd of 2007, look, I'm just going to get right into it. It was only in 10 theaters. So it made...
Oh, wait, did it really come out July 22nd? Because today's the 23rd.
Oh, it came out on the 20th, and the week ending, the weekend ending would be the 22nd. So this is what, 16 years... 16 years later. Look at that.
It's very fortuitous.
We just did another movie. Oh, I just did an episode of Stu's show on The Dark Knight. Mm-hmm. And I watched it earlier this week. And the next day I saw somebody put on Twitter or whatever that it was the 15th anniversary that day. So I watched it a day before its 15th anniversary.
Yeah. I like little things like that. Like little coincidences. Yeah. And
this happened 2 times in 1 week, basically. Yeah.
So even more of a coincidence.
Look at that. So, So in 10 theaters, it made $243,000. It came in 25th that week. The movies that did better than it, number 5, it had been out for 4 weeks. It made $11 million. Laura, would you ever eat in a restaurant where a rat was the head chef?
No.
All right. Well,
I actually, that you're talking about Ratatouille.
Yeah.
I only saw Ratatouille for the first time like a year ago.
I like it. It's a good movie.
It's cute. Yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
But I wouldn't eat at that restaurant now.
Yeah, me neither. Number 4, out for 3 weeks, $21 million. The first Transformers movie. I think the 19th just came out about a week ago.
Oh, I remember when that came out, a friend asked me if I was going to go see it the opening weekend. And I said no. And he called me un-American for some reason. And it's always just stuck in every time I hear Transformers, I just think of how un-American I was that weekend, because I don't know.
Funnily enough, the Transformers began as a Japanese
right? It made no sense and it was stupid, but it's always going to be in my head forever now.
All right. Number 3, it opened that week. It made $28 million. The remake of Hairspray. So not the John Waters one, but I think...
I never saw that one.
Me neither. I think that's John Travolta, right? Doing the Divine.
Oh, yeah. John Travolta was Divine, and Zac Efron was in it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Number 2, out for 2 weeks, $33 million. Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Mm. And then number 1, $34 million. It also opened that week. I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. And if you didn't see that one in the theaters, Laura, you definitely were un-American.
Yes, obviously.
All right, let's rate this thing.
Hit me with it. Just give it to me straight.
All right, you know the scores, everybody out there, and Laura definitely knows it. 0 to 5, 0 being the worst thing ever, 5 being the best thing ever, quarter and half scale optional. I'll go first on this one. I really do like this movie a lot. I always have. Great cast. This movie has a really good cast. Really good practical and special effects. There's nothing egregious in this thing. There's no like CG that I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. It looks really good. I won't jump on the bandwagon of saying I hate the ending. I don't, but I certainly understand that it takes a turn, and I don't even know if that turn's necessary. I definitely could see watching this movie without the pinbacker stuff and probably still really enjoying it. Just the human danger and that element, like just them trying to finish the mission with a lot of stuff that's gone wrong. I could have still enjoyed that. The Pinbacker stuff adds another level to it. And I think because it's in so little of it is why it feels a little weird, because it really is the last 15 minutes. If Pinbacker kind of showed up multiple times and did some of the stuff on the ship throughout the course of the movie, it might have felt a little bit more earned, I guess. Like if you're like, oh, why did the oxygen garden blow up? And then you kind of see Pinbacker's little greasy motherfucking nude.
He's kind of like tiptoeing away,
tiptoeing
like a
around.
cartoon villain. Yeah.
So I think
Whiplash.
Yeah. So I do think I understand why some people don't like that, but I don't think it's really to the detriment of the movie. I think it still works. It's just, it definitely is like a tonal shift. We did another movie very recently. We did one called Warning Sign that it probably was like 2 episodes ago at this point. And it's about a contaminant, like a virus or a bacteria that happens in this facility. And then they also add an element that's like a zombie element, but neither one of them is super strong. And it almost felt like the zombie element could have just been tucked away, and it could have just been a story about human survival in a virus type of situation.
Okay.
And this is very funny because it reminds me of the same thing, but I still enjoy it. I'm going to give this a 3.50. I do really enjoy this movie. Cillian Murphy, Tiny and Twinkie, very good. So many people now know Chris Evans as Captain America, but this is right before Captain America. And he is Chris Evans, I think, is the best one in this film. Even though he's not necessarily the lead, and everybody else is really good. The cast right down to, even Harvey, because as much as you hated him because he was playing it well. But yeah, so that's what I think of Sunshine. Laura, what do you give it?
I'm going to give it a 4.5. I thought this was a great movie. Like by the end of it, I was just like, oh, that was awesome. And with the ending, my opinion on the ending was like, the course of the movie kind of went along with the course of the ship. Like everything seems fine, is on track. And by the time that you're at the end of the movie and at the end of the mission, everything is fucked up, going haywire. It's manic. And it's not what you thought would have been happening. So I thought like the appearance of Pinbacker so far into the movie kind of reflected that to me, like the unexpected kind of ending to it. I thought the sound design in it was excellent. There wasn't much music throughout the movie, but
it was good though.
Have a score, it was really great. And like again, I agree, like the acting for everybody I really didn't feel there was a weak link in the cast, which is, sometimes hard when you have a small kind of encapsulated movie that really doesn't have much of it doesn't go to different places really. Sometimes somebody can easily bring that down, but everybody just had really strong performances, in my opinion. I thought the script was great and the story was good, and a lot of the cinematography was just really great. There are some shots from this movie that you don't realize it at first, but then you just realize how beautiful the shot is. There were a lot of Dutch angles, but that didn't take me out of it too much.
Look, I'm going to tell you, Laura, if you have never seen it, watch Battlefield Earth.
Oh, I've seen Battlefield Earth.
Battlefield Earth is all Dutch angles. And so this movie, any movie that has like 5 or 6 Dutch angles in it is okay by me, because Battlefield Earth is an hour and 40 minutes of fucking Dutch angles. Mm-hmm. All right. So 4.5 and a 3.5. That's pretty solid. So Laura, you got to come back soon. We'll do something else. It's always fun having you on. Thank you for jumping in and filling the Manster seat while he is, I don't know, right now he's probably got like a dresser on his back. Like he's got one of those straps with a dresser on his back.
He's just like hiking it up some stairs, and he's just being really strong and manly.
Yeah, he's like walking to one, and he's in his head, he's thinking, I'd rather be talking about Sunshine right now. God damn it. All right. So if you want to follow The Pint, first of all, please go to Patreon/The Pint and check us out there. You get all kinds of extra cool stuff. I'm not trying to take your money without giving you something, man. I'm trying to give you something. Also, we're off Twitter now, but we are on Instagram at The Pint Podcast, and we're on that other weird Instagram thing, Threads, also at The Pint Podcast. Follow us there. I don't use it very much. It's like Twitter, but it's not Twitter. So there's that, but follow us there. We'll follow you back. And then Facebook, of course, the Pint of Pop Culture Podcast. Any and all of the podcatchers you could imagine, you can find us there. And until next time, I'll say see ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!